First things to keep in mind, this is just a reminder that as we have been saying about this topic in general, the topic of the afterlife, the topic of death and everything that happens after death, we said that this is all from the world of the unseen, the world of the hidden, alam al-ghayb. And in a lot of cases, first of all, we can never know. We can never know what this fully means until we experience it ourselves. We can approximate. We can use the analogies. We can understand to a large extent and enough to act on. And that's the purpose here. The details of these, yes, in certain cases, there's going to be analogies, there's going to be figurative language, there's going to be, all of this is to approximate what happens. Otherwise, it's impossible to describe all of this in kind of scientific, accurate detail until and unless we go through it. The second point related to this is that, and this is perhaps more of a personal observation for myself here, but from what I have seen, this is one of the topics where there might be a lot more nonsense than usual. This whole topic of alam al-barzakh and everything related to it. So just as a quick remark for all of us, that you want to be a little bit more cautious here, make sure you're getting your information from where you're supposed to. The moment you go into anything from the world of the unseen, the hidden, the occult, the mysterious, then there's a whole lot of misinformation or disinformation out there. So you have to sift through it. So make sure that you have reliable authorities that you can rely on, that are trustworthy. You're getting information from the right place. You're saving yourself a lot of time with that, instead of getting in a lot of information that you have to kind of filter through afterwards and see whether the things that is actual, compatible with Islamic worldview and Islamic theology or not. Okay, so this is a very, very quick remark on that. Alam al-Barzakh begins, technically, if we want to be a bit more technical here, Alam al-Barzakh begins once the soul detaches or departs or leaves the body. Now, even the language I'm using now is an approximate language. It's not accurate. The way we talk quickly when we talk about the soul, we talk as though the soul is inside the body. And if you go through the narrations, especially the narrations, the reports from Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, they don't say the soul is in the body. It's in and around the body. In fact, we have narrations that talk about the soul. They say the soul is like an iklil. An iklil is a very soft fabric. Sometimes you can put it over the cradle of a baby to protect it from mosquitoes or around a bed. That kind of fabric. It looks like a very soft net, or a woman may wear it on her wedding, for instance, to cover that kind of fabric. Okay, so they say it covers in this way. So it's loosely around and in and around the body, but not, technically speaking, that it is inside and it's out. It's outside, around, and inside the body. Okay, that's one. So once this disconnect happens between the soul and the body, so that the body can no longer control the soul, the soul can no longer control the body at all, that detachment, that disconnect has happened entirely, that's when we can really say you have entered Alam al-Barzakh. But once again, this is one of the terms that can be used to be in a more loose way, to describe the death, the moments of death, what happens at death. And we're going to go through some of the more minute stations that are going to happen there as we enter Alam al-Barzakh. Okay, but this is just to position things. When we talk, usually we say that in Alam al-Barzakh, and again, this is when you hear summaries and overviews, you go very quickly over these. But if you go in the details and you read each one of the each one of the narrations and you put them all together in a coherent way, the image becomes a lot clearer. We usually say that when you reach Alam al-Barzakh, there is absolutely no more connection between the soul and the body. Once again, this is not entirely accurate. The Imams are very clear that there will always be a sort of link between the soul and the body. even if the body completely disintegrates. We have that in certain narrations where the Imams are specifically asked, what about if the body decomposes? And the Imam says it will remain there in the particles left in the soil. And in other narrations, the Imams seem to say there is an attachment between the soul and where the body was laid to rest. So there's a link between, let's call it the geographic location or the actual spatial location where the body was put. There's a link between the soul and that body. So there is an importance on where the body is going to be buried, just to keep in mind. And to, we'll come back to a little bit of that, but to say that there's absolutely no link, that's not entirely accurate. There is a little bit of link. In fact, as we're going to see, for instance, if you go and you visit someone who is deceased, you're going to visit where their body is. And we are told that the person who is deceased is going to be aware that you are visiting them. But their level of awareness depends on their state. So they're allowed to see and feel and hear, depending on how good they were. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows this to happen, but not for everyone and not to the same extent. Inshallah, we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But if this is the case, then it means that there is a little bit of a link. But the soul is not inside the ground, so to speak. Okay, it seems more from above in certain narrations. There's also a movement ascribed to the souls. Now, I'm telling you the things that are not linear. I'm going to go into more systematic in a second. I'm just kind of trying to complement the information you most likely already have so that we kind of all agree on what we're talking about. In certain narrations, it's clear that there's a movement. The souls are moved. And it looks like there is a movement of the souls in Alam al-Barzakh, depending on whether they are good or bad. And we're going to see some verses of the Quran that seem to talk about this very clearly. And sometimes the movement is individual, and sometimes the movement is in groups. So you are moved to a certain location at certain times in the day, certain times in the year, certain times in the week, and brought back. Okay, so there are locations that are much more spiritual in this sense than others, where the souls are brought to and from them, depending on time of day, time of month, time of week, time of year, and how good they were, how bad they were, and so on and so forth. So once again, just the idea that they're being moved and brought back, it reemphasizes the notion that there is a link between the soul and that location, right? They keep coming back to the same location where the body was buried or laid to rest in its final location. And finally, this entire world of Alam al-Barzakh is a spiritual world. There's an emphasis on it, but it's not a world without a body. The Imams, peace upon them, they say that you have a body, but it's an image of a body. Okay, so that when they see each other, they recognize each other right away. So you have an image of your body. It may not be this kind of physical material body that we know, but there is something given to you that goes with the soul for you to live in that world. And we're going to see why, because there's more happening than just you being there. There's more happening in Alam al-Barzakh. And this is what matters to us more. Okay, what's happening there depends on what we're doing in this life. So we want to know, so what is happening there? So literally, as we said, al-Barzakh, the word Barzakh basically means barrier. Okay, so something that prevents two things from entering into each other, a wall, a barrier, an obstacle. And this is, of course, a term that was taken from the Holy Quran, and we're going to get to the verse that talks about this. So there is a wall or a barrier that is between this world and the next world, preventing us from seeing and interacting with Alam al-Barzakh, and the same thing from Alam al-Barzakh to this world. And as we said, sometimes it's referred to as the world of death or the world of the grave or al-Barzakh, which we can translate as the intermediary world or the middle world between this life and the afterlife. So, as we said, it technically begins once the soul has fully detached, but there is more, just a little bit more nuance here. So this is some of the details that we could have covered last time, but since we didn't, let's add it here. First of all, as we said, there is a process of the extraction of the soul. And we said that this is going to be entirely based on how you go through this process is going to be entirely based on how you lived your life, how good you were. Okay, so we said this could be a very simple, easy, nice, pleasant process, or it could be very harsh and very difficult as a process, as the soul is extracted and detached completely from the body so that it can no longer control the body. That's a first phase. The second one is the phase that I'm referring to here as the phase of entering the next world, Alam al-Barzakh. Alam al-Barzakh is a world, as the term implies, a world of its own. To enter it, you need to be prepared. And there seems to be something that happens to prepare you. And it's not a pleasant thing. So I did not refer to the consequence of this, but once again, this is a milestone or a station that entirely depends on who you were and how you behaved in this world. And this is what's referred to as the crushing of the ground or the crushing of the grave. ضغطة القبر. It's as though if someone understands the narrations related to this topic, as someone enters into the next world, it's as though they have to go through a process to be prepared existentially, ontologically, as an entity, to enter the next world. And part of this, and that's why in the narrations, very, very few people can escape from this.